Welcome back to part 8 of our Pinball special podcast at the Free Play Arcade podcast. I am Chris Delp, Community Liaison of Free Play Arcade. I'm joined by Arthur Williams.
My job is worse Chris Delp.
I don't even know how to respond to that. And of course, the CEO of Free Play Arcade, Corey Hayden.
And when we were last talking, we were talking a rambling, weird podcast about pinball.
Wait, a rambling, weird podcast from us. This does not sound like us at all.
For some reason, we're going to go ahead and keep going with it. So we're talking pinball. We did a weird historical walkthrough and learned that Wikipedia's list of pinballs that came out was wildly incomplete.
Shocking.
So then we walked back a little bit. We talked about,
edited the Wikipedia.
The Gottliebs, the Williams of the 80s, Bally Midway coming in as a major player, then all the consolidation that was happening. We had Sega Pinball floating around there in the 90s, with primarily the remnants of Williams, WMS, Bally Midway making some really good pinballs there. And then everything died in the late 90s, and it was really, really scary until a company named Stern, which had acquired the assets of Sega Pinball, decided to start making some pinball. We went through kind of their early history. They had some really terrible pinballs really early. And then in 2003, they made Simpsons Pinball Party and Lord of the Rings Pinball, both considered great pinballs. Really, really good.
Still haven't played it. It's on the floor. I need to play it.
Lord of the Rings Pinball.
I've been playing that, and it is incredible. Yes. It is so much fun.
Since we recorded that last podcast, Lord of the Rings has landed at Richardson. Mm-hmm. It has been very popular. And a lot of the problems that everyone thought we were going to have been just okay. Because one of the criticisms of Lord of the Rings, as a quick side note, is that the games can take forever. Even if you're a medium level pinball player, it's not impossible for you to have a 20-minute ball. But it's still pretty rare. And so instead it's become like a really, really awesome thing when people have that 10 to 20-minute ball. It's like really cool. People are crowding around and being like, "Whoa, he's still going. It's hard to hit the outlanes on that game." So it encourages kind of these nice long games, which is good.
I gotta be honest, of late, that's been discouraging me from playing pinball tables. Not every pinball table, but specifically that era and slightly before, when it was just like the Addams Family, where it just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of when, and I was actually dealing with that with Lord of the Rings Pinball, because I was testing it and had a really good ball too while I was testing all my shots, and then next thing I know, I can't die.
Yeah, as much as I'm frustrated as much as I'm frustrated by losing the ball, like, this game needs to come to an end at some point. Right. Otherwise, now we're turning it into another Marathon Arcade record, and I've said many times I hate those records.
Well, it reminds me of when I was doing the Mr. Do challenges a few years ago.
Yeah, that takes like an hour.
And then I got to the point where every good game of Mr. Do was like a 45 to an hour.
Correct.
And it takes a lot of
and that's not even marathoning it.
Right. That's just that, and it takes a lot of effort to step up to a game and know that the first 30 minutes are all predetermined, and you're just going to do it, and then things will get interesting. But and I know that there's probably serious gamers out there, serious arcade gamers that hear me complaining about having to get to 30 minutes for things to get interesting, but still, that's a lot of time investment. So you can kind of see that with Lord of the Rings Pinball. A lot of the more hardcore players, when we were putting out, were like, that game's going to have to come off the floor because people will never die. Fortunately, we have a really cool...
That's free anyway, so...
Yeah, we have a
balanced
crowd. It's not a big deal. It's not on a route, so we don't care if we're making anything a game, because it's, it's all free once you pay your admission at Free Play. So
I should make an aside here. I went to LA in between our podcasts, and I visited another arcade out in LA that was running off of a quarter model. So I had a different pinball experience than I normally have.
Sure, yeah.
So I having cut my teeth more or less playing pinball at Free Play, where everything's free, of course, and you can, if you have a bad ball, you can turn them. You can walk. You can walk away. You can turn it onto another game. You just hold start. There's all kinds of things you can do. But I don't feel an investment into the game at all, other than am I playing it? Am I not playing it? Do I want to play it? So I played a game we're going to talk about later, I'm sure, but that is not really important here. I put my 2 quarters in to start the game. I got a replay because you guys have taught me how to play pinball here, and I broke the high score. That's another credit, and I matched. Now I have 3 credits.
Right. and you're done. You already set the high score. You're ready to go.
I am, and it took me 30 minutes, and then now I have 3 more credits. Well, now I kind of feel obligated to play, right?
Of course, you put the money in.
Right.
Those games are yours. You bought them.
Right.
You have to finish them.
Right. So I kept playing, and I kept piling up credits, and I'm like, yeah. At some point, I just like realized I need to walk away. Like this is it's not free play. Yes, I paid for it, but it's not quite the same. I need to. You need some limits.
Well, I talked to, obviously, just this is a good aside to ramble on about.
I like the free play model. But, I'm just gonna go out there.
But yeah, I know a lot of owners of the different arcades and the coin arcades versus free play, and a lot of them will do coin arcades. One, their arcade games are going to last longer because they get less play.
True.
And it just like no matter what, and it like really starts to come into play at pinball, which have parts that are designed to destroy themselves slowly over.
Yeah, times a cannonball hitting your components, and plus times 100 on the number of components.
Well, I had someone actually tell me this weekend that 40,000 plays was supposed to be a pinball lifetime. Now I've always heard like the 80 to 120, so I always say like 100,000.
Well, we're about to get to the new line of pinball machines that are 40,000.
It was really great because 40,000 plays on our pinball is like a nice few months or whatever. Right. It's absurd. And obviously our pinballs last on our floor longer than a few months, but it is one of the major challenges. But yeah, the quarter play operators are generally just hoping that they can get as many people in to get a drink, and then maybe they'll walk around and play the game. And that's the big criticism of the free play model is you have to pay that $10 at the door, and you're not really encouraged to stop by for 2 seconds, have a drink, and leave. Whereas those are just the...
and it was weird because I've had the opposite experience where if I play a game at free play, that is exactly what I do. I hit start, I play a game, it is over, now I'm done.
Right.
When I did it at a quarter arcade, I hit start, I played a game, it is now over, and it says, hey, you kind of have a responsibility to play 3 more games, which is then going to turn into another couple of games. It's like, okay, I kind of need to see my friends here.
Well, and the interesting thing too is...
And I would just walk away if it was free play. One game done, it's still free. It's still free. I can still play here if I want to. There's no one behind me. Nah.
Well, and though it's not impossible, or actually it's probably relatively common, what we see is a lot, these quarter arcades, you'll still end up spending $10+ on the games if you're there for any period of time at all.
Sure, depending on the game, for sure.
And
depending on the arcade, it's not exactly a quarter a play anymore.
Well, yeah, it really does depend.
$2.
The barcade format right now is holding on pretty well to the 1 quarter for arcade games.
Because we're
two quarters for pinball.
All the revenue's coming from.
Right, and they're doing what they can to hold on to that. Which for some games that makes a lot of sense. Like any Konami game should only be a quarter credit because you're going to die a lot, you're going to play a lot, and that really makes it a lot more fun, I think. But
stakes. Need stakes in that game.
But then there are definitely...
That's kind of what I'm talking about with pinball, too. I need stakes.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and it's... I don't know. It's interesting. So
I need the threat of losing.
Where we left off, and we're kind of going on our memory, because the last podcast hasn't been released yet, and we haven't reviewed the footage or anything. We were talking about... So we walked through Stern. After that 2003... They got really, really heavy. They were obviously already making stuff based on license because it was Simpsons and Lord of the Ring, but they got really, really heavy into licensed plays they knew they could sell. And so next thing you know, every major Hollywood movie or old band was getting a pinball. I mean, you had...
Through today.
Right. You had Family Guy, Spider-Man, CSI got a pinball. 24 received a pinball in the middle of it.
Nice.
Wow. So yeah, Big Buck...
Does the game shut itself off after 24 hours?
Yeah, it's just done. Big Buck Hunter received a pinball for some reason. So Stern was
some odd licenses in the middle of that.
And it's hard because every time we kind of say negative things about Stern, they're like, they saved pinball, and all of that's true. And they kept making pinball. All of that's true, but you can tell in like 2007 through 2010, it was not a great time to be making pinball because it's Big Buck Hunter the pinball or NBA the pinball, which was not a great game. Which is interesting because that was just based on the original design for the Space Jam pinball, which probably wasn't going to be good anyways. But the license is probably a lot of
probably hard to license Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny.
Right, I imagine it was just the Warner Brothers side, but I don't know if that's true.
Let's go cheaper seems to be a reoccurring theme here.
And then we talked about how Tron came out and how that was one of the big ones where Stern started that problematic
Multi-versions.
Yeah, and that might not have been the very first, but it's part of an issue where the limited edition is substantially better and different than the Pro, and not just in like ornamentation, but actually in
the
play.
gameplay. It's as if there are 2 to 3 different games carrying the same title.
And you know, Tron LE was like a light version of what we're gonna see later, where there's whole different play fields included. And, It's a totally different game, which both games could be good, but it's just why do we have 2 versions? I don't know. We were talking about that last time, and then we got into kind of Stern starting to make some pretty good stuff. The Metallicas, the AC/DCs, those are pretty well loved games in terms from pinball people, while also being attached to a theme that also gets a lot of people kind of interested. Which is, you know, Stern clearly knows that middle-aged white guys like pinball. And
also that they have money.
And that they have the money to buy pinball, so they target those bands, which, I mean, I'm a fan of Metallica, I'm a fan of AC/DC, I'm not at all making judgment there, but it's clear that they're doing that to make sure that they have home sales super bolstered, while, of course, like for an arcade like us, at this point, with as many locations, in the middle of this, we announced that we're opening a Fort Worth location. So as we keep opening locations, we're pretty much buying at least one, and I don't think we've ever bought more than one. 2. There's actually 2. Anyways, we're buying almost every Stern pinball that comes out, regardless of quality, regardless of anything at this point, because it helps keep things going. Plus, new pinball players pinball players like to find the new tables. And
Well, you know, and it feels like they've been block copying their setups, their designs, their placements. You know, the angles are all the same. I really don't need to look at the play field to make shots in a Stern table because they're all the same.
Yeah, the shared parts are pretty substantial,
but it is fun.
Yeah, and they're all pretty. I mean, like in general, now there's occasionally like some that are clearly better than others, but they're all fine. They're all fun to play. They're all. None of them are terrible. I mean, I'm sure NASCAR is a terrible, and Mustang. Mustang, I have played. It's terrible. So there are some.
Out of curiosity, what's wrong with it?
There's no flow. I actually think that Ghostbusters is kind of suffers from that a little bit too. Ghostbusters I kind of thought was really fun at first because it was themed based on the 80s Ghostbuster. And then the more I played it, the less I liked it. And then I kind of came around a little bit because that's the other thing we were talking about last time. Stern changes the code. And they're releasing pinballs that are clearly not done. So what probably happened is, my opinion, because we did the launch party here in DFW, which was a cool event for a young arcade at the time. For Ghostbusters Pinball, and we didn't even have a Ghostbusters on the floor the day after. It was just a launch party, and at the time, obviously, it was brand new, and the code was so raw that I probably was just like, okay, this is a game, I guess. But and then, you know, I played with it, and I didn't like it, and now I don't even mind it as much, although compared to some of the others, I think it's clearly inferior.
When they update the code to these Stern games, do they just add new gameplay options? The game plays the same by and large, doesn't it? I mean, all the ramps are the same.
The ramps don't move in location.
Right. But they can change the rule set so you unlock certain things at certain times.
Yeah, and you can still play as Guile. He's been nerfed.
Okay.
Right. And they can add gameplay settings, new sounds. Famously, Guardians of the Galaxy came out, and everyone really, really wanted to love it. And that was one of the first Sterns that we put a big sign on, because we were the first people in DFW to have a Guardians of the Galaxy, and we had to put a sign on it that just said, this game is really raw. And
it was. I remember playing it and very much disliking it.
Yeah, and now it's good. It's a really fun game to play.
Now it's me and Will go back and forth playing that game all the time.
Yeah, it's an actual good game, and it's amazing what code can do to change it, but it's also really disappointing because that was the first Stern game that we put out at its launch. All the others we'd kind of set on because we were concerned about quality and updates and stuff, but we just said, you know what? We got it first in the whole Metroplex. Let's give this a shot. And within a few games, we had to put a sign on that just said, this is still raw and happening. And it was so buggy. And that was the other thing. We had sound bugs, all sorts of stuff that were still happening on a commercially released pinball. It was irritating. Now, 2 years later, it's all fixed. It's great. It's beautiful.
I do recall the machine that I was playing, some of the quests didn't have anything happening in them, and the sound effects just weren't there. Like you would think that it would say "I am Groot" when the Groot multi-ball started, and it just nothing.
Yeah, no, it was.
They fixed those since, so yeah, I see what you're talking about.
It was as raw as I can imagine pinball until Deadpool came out not too long after that. But that's one of the.
We want to talk about Deadpool.
Well, hold on.
I can talk about Deadpool.
Let's go ahead and make sure. So I think we hit on Whoa Nelly right last time.
Yes.
Then we were in some of our talks about the reskinning of the same pinball. So Stern clearly has like kind of two main models right now, where they have just their generic pinball that it'll probably have 3 bumpers up in the top right, and it'll have a mildly open playfield with some ramp. I mean, like it's very, very similar, and in some ways not bad. And they clearly make changes. They have different toys and different things that happen.
Sometimes the ramp is where the orbit is, and the orbit's where the ramp is, but it's the same angle either way.
Right. And then
you still don't have to look to make the shot.
In 2015, they also released that was kind of going to be there.
Oh, you need to hit the thing in the middle too. There's a big ornament in the middle that's in the shape of whatever the band, show,
does
TV,
something,
movie,
dances, or
right?
Spins.
You got to hit that. You got to hit it multiple times. In fact.
They also released their secondary table, which was supposed to be kind of a less expensive for them pinball table that was going to harken back to those days of like the and the electromechanical games or the early solid states, called Whoa Nelly Big Juicy Melons. And we talked about this last time, which became the jewel of Stern clearly bought way too many parts for this game.
And this one in particular was the only non-licensed game for a long time, wasn't it?
It's true. It's true. I can't see, I mean, there's, other than their original games, I don't think there's any that were like based on any original anything. I mean, we have World Poker Tour and Dale Jr. Ripley's Believe It or Not. I mean, it was, but yeah, originally they had some Sharky Shootout and High Roller Casino.
When you get Dale Jr. and put it out on the floor, can we have like a tattoo battle? Like the winner gets a free 88 tattoo?
Yes.
Or was this the 8 era?
I don't actually.
Okay.
Good question.
Was it updated with the code to make it 88?
Did they change it around? I don't know.
Probably killed it with a bug. Y2K 88 bug.
So Whoa Nelly did not sell at all because it was offensive, and it was offensive both to people who would classify themselves as rednecks and also to every person who is a female. So they reskinned it as going to be their lower end bar game as Pabst Can Crusher or something like that. They got a PBR license. I
hope that didn't set them back too far.
That still didn't sell very well. And that's the only one that I've had people ask me. They don't really want us to get the game. They're like, "What's the deal with that?" And then I tell them, and then they're like, "Do you have a Whoa Nelly?" They're like, they want to see it as like a museum of horrors kind of thing, just to be like, "No, I can't believe that exists."
You told me that Stern's owned by Gary Stern. Is Ray Upshaw actually Gary Stern?
Or maybe.
Is he? I'm sure he made this entire lineup. I'm sure of it. There's a Big Buck Hunter pinball.
We're not saying that Stern always goes for the lowest common denominator, but
I like Ray and all.
They want to sell pinballs, and so none of these are high concepts. None of these are things. I mean, what's kind of interesting to me is like how some of these are just going to be clearly a moment in time, which happened to old pinball too. But like the Walking Dead pinball, as you know, when Walking Dead pinball came out in 2014, Walking Dead was a critical darling. Everyone loved it. Now it's generally considered to have jumped the shark. I haven't watched it in a few seasons. I don't know what's going on in it. But in 5 or 6 years, I think it's going to be really interesting to see people walk next to a Walking Dead pinball and see if it's still in their consciousness. And slowly it's going
they're still making new shows.
But Walking Dead, the pinball, I kind of like it because it's absurd. Like, it's really gross.
Yeah, there's a big zombie.
And I always...
There's a big thing in the middle. You need to hit it over and over again. It's related to the show.
Last year, we hosted the state championships at Different Arcade, and there was a Walking Dead machine, and I was playing it for fun beforehand, and I looked down at the plunger because I felt weird, and it was this screaming, bloody zombie head, and I'm like, all right.
And Walking Dead is the one that's been modded so hard that we get these comments all the time that they're like, why aren't you running these totally illegal mods on your Walking Dead? And we're like, oh, because they're totally legal. And they're like, what? You should put these... And because Walking Dead has been just hacked up a lot, which is, kind of cool for your homebrew fan.
Yeah.
Not really something we could do.
I am a homebrew fan, and I work at an arcade that prides itself on having original arcade equipment and the real...
Stuff's funny sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, but I do love walking in when I see, like, all of our pinball machines taken up, and for whatever reason, Walking Dead's the one that has like the 11-year-old girl, and all of a sudden, really gross stuff starts happening, and you can tell like she's just like, I don't think I'm supposed to be seeing this stuff. This is gross. Like, you know, people are dying, and there's like pixelated zombies on the screen and stuff like that. That always makes me really happy. Yeah, we were talking about Whoa Nelly became Pabst Can Crusher, and we'll get back to that because
are they going to reskin it again?
The reskins are not done yet.
Oh dear.
So in the meantime, as we were talking about last time, we had Jersey Jack appear and released a well-loved Wizard of Oz, which I thought was a weird license at the time, but at the pinball table, I like it more now than I did back in the day, back when it came out, 5 years ago or 4 years ago.
I have still never been able to play it.
And and one of the interesting things is, as we've seen pinball kind of become more popular at places like Free Play, and we are talking. I actually had the press right this week that Free Play believes we're in the golden age of pinball, because I had used that in one of my quotes and talked about.
Sure, in the previous podcast.
Yeah,
and I think we are. I think we are in the golden age of pinball.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely the quality per unit is absurd right now. It's really great.
And the amount of titles coming out is much larger today than it had been
10 years ago.
Yeah.
20 years ago.
20 years ago, in particular, seems like it was the dark ages.
Well, 20 years ago was what we were talking about last time, was the Dead. That was when it died.
Yeah.
And then it got resurrected with really bad tables that eventually became good, which is good. So Jersey Jack, they released Wizard of Oz, and they followed it up with The Hobbit. And so Jersey Jack did a couple kind of controversial things. And I think this is still, even though Stern has kind of followed suit, I still think it's controversial. Jersey Jack put huge screens at the back of their games.
Right. Including Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I haven't to play
27-inch TVs, basically, which at the time everyone was really concerned about. And I still, this is probably something to ask y'all's opinion on. I still find it kind of distracting. And so Stern held fast for a while with the original kind of dot matrix display type background, and now most every one of theirs, because it's actually cheaper this way, comes with a TV in it. Because I mean they didn't go to the same size as Jersey Jack. It's a little smaller, and for some reason the Stern stuff irritates me a little less. But even so, I still find it a little distracting.
I'm worried about the long-term viability of whatever screen they're using.
Right. How long it's going to last in there.
Right.
I guess you can pretty easily replace an LED.
For now, yeah.
Now,
compared
maybe? I don't know. But I mean, when they replace it, when technology upgrades to something much better, and I can see that happening. Like CRTs, they still haven't caught up to certain things with CRTs, which means we still have to go collect them, and that's hard enough. But LCD, there's nothing good about them other than like they were the next big thing. Well, mandated.
I think most pinball people would say it's easier than finding like the actual old dot matrix displays and stuff that they're coming from, because those are now kind of outdated and antiquated.
Imagine you could work on those a little better, though, right?
Yeah, I feel like they could be home brewed.
Well, and
replaced.
And there's a company. While we're talking about displays, there's a company called Color DMD, which makes kind of upgrade kits for.
And I've seen them
for dot matrix, and we have one on our Tron LE, because our Tron LE is the most uber one ever, and our Twilight Zone that is now in the shop has one, and a few of our pinballs have them, and a few of our pinballs don't on purpose. It can be distracting, but in a world where they're putting huge TVs in the pinballs, we've kind of found that people are much less distracted by a few color pixels. But those are just those are basically like LCD strip TVs.
I do find it on occasion distracting to have the TV there. Back to your original question, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
Like most of the time I'm looking at the playfield, right?
Yeah, I'm generally not seeing the screen at all when I'm playing.
Well, that's kind of cool behind the person to look at the screen and have a better spectator experience, because like looking at the pinball table at the playfield can be compelling at times, especially if you're watching a talented player, and also it can be a lot of like the same. To see him activate a new mode, the new Hobbit, whatever flies up, I get more Benedict Cumberbatch, and then whatever extra ball. It's kind of nice. Dialed in, really distracting. I still don't mind.
Well, Dialed In has the same size.
Dialed In taking your picture, and you're like, oh no, I was making that face. Oh, I've lost my ball.
Well,
and they have the mini screen on the little sliding cell phone you have to power up and things like that.
The third Jersey Jack game was probably one of the most interesting pinballs that is coming out in a long time, and is a great one. Pat Lawler gets to do an original concept again, and I don't know if y'all have noticed, we have not in 20 years there hasn't been an original concept pinball. It seems like I'll have to check the timeline on when Spooky came in, but Jersey Jack's third pinball was Pat Lawler making a game called Dialed In. And Pat Lawler had designed this a long time ago and really had this interest, and it kept kind of evolving in his head as he saw more and more people get addicted to their phones and technology and stuff. So you're really dialed in when you play Dialed In. And it's got little mini screens that have little phones and stuff. And let me just say, Jersey Jack has to hate those at this point because we've had to replace like 6 of them, and half of those were under warranty. And these are like these little tiny 4-inch screens that I'm sure don't cost $200, but it costs us $200 to get them.
I want to teleport you forward 25 years in time to have this podcast again. Actually, not a podcast at all. I want you to just explain it to a 7-year-old 25 years from now. What all these like little things on the screen, like you know, do you have to use your hands? This is going to be one of those.
So they have like emojis involved. Dialed In really went.
It very much lives in the era that it came out. What, 2017?
2017, yeah.
2017. That belongs right there and not in the future.
The one in Arlington, I've been speaking with Matt with a bunch. Every time that I'm down there on a Saturday, he's got that thing open. He's working on it, and I was asking him about it. He says that it breaks more than any machine he's ever had.
Well, he's forgetting about his Ballygolly Black Hole.
Black Hole?
The Gottlieb
That's
Black
the
Hole
other one that he has to work on the most.
But Dialed In is problematic. But Dialed In is really controversial-ish in pinball because of how highly rated it is. It is generally considered a unquestionable, and if you question this around real hardcore pinball people, they'll say you're wrong. Top 10.
Which one?
Dialed In.
Okay, cool.
And
I've had a lot of fun with it.
It's a cool pinball. My biggest complaint, and it's totally nitpicky, is the scoring. I don't like the
you don't like low scoring?
The small scoring. It throws me for a loop.
It feels arbitrary to me.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously is, but it's just for whatever. And I also generally dislike it when it's a trillion-point games and stuff like that.
Right? Yeah, I don't like billion-point bonuses.
But
games.
But yeah, the millions. I'm just so used to it that when I get 23,000 points for a super round, like a super mission that I just did, and they're like, here's 23,000 points. I'm like, I feel like I did more work than that. Dialed In.
Could have swore I was playing this game for 25 minutes.
Right. This is like, that's the thing. You hit 100,000, you're like, all right, nice. That's good enough. Like, Dialed In's weird.
I like the game's concept a lot. It's one of the 2 modern pinball games I can think of with their own unique look and feel that's not based on a license or anything.
Well, yeah, it's
that one, Total Nuclear Annihilation, are the only 2 that I can think of off the top of my head, and I think both are really cool. If for no other reason than just they had their own concepts. And I think that's really cool.
And that was, unfortunately, that we announced this and found ourselves in the golden age, because in 2015, which is only 4 years ago, it was a little bit of a different world. But we announced a long time ago that we loved like those late 80s, early 90s, because they were generally told a story that wasn't available elsewhere. Like, to me, the Machine Bride of Pidgeot might, at the end of the day, be my favorite, because when I would play that, I would get engrossed in like what was happening and how interesting it was, and then obviously the face swap.
I love the practical effects.
The whole game to me felt really special. And when I played the newer Sterns, certainly the newer Sterns that I was playing at the time, I just didn't feel it all as it involved or sucked in, and I loved it because it was telling a story. I mean, it's not a real story, but it felt unique to me, and that's also why I like
about the practical effects. Always takes me into that game too, because you have missions in lots of games, and all of them actually by design blueprint exactly the same. Yes, you have missions in all of them, and they all kind of like have a progression, and you're doing some sort of menial task, and you get to see it happen. But in the Machine Bride of Pinbot, you're building an android by putting balls in like the sockets that form the eyes, and it flips over, and in the mouth, and it flips over, and it talks.
I can speak. I mean, it's great.
It's great, and it's real. It's practical, and it's not just a screen up there that's showing you something that you may or may not pay attention to. No, it's kind of cool.
So, and yeah, I was thinking back just then because
the high speed 2 to getaway,
the magnetic
the
supercharger,
practical effect of the supercharger. The ball is moving like that. It's really cool.
And so I was just thinking when we launched, and we had pinballs right next to each other Black Knight 2000 and Bride of Pinball. And just how cool it would be, because Bride of Pinball, it's just beautiful. It's a ton of fun to play. It's engrossing. And then you go to Black Knight 2000 with the sounds of BK2K, and it's like, this whole beautiful ride.
And a different angle, and it just feels like a totally different pinball machine because it is a totally different pinball machine. And yeah, no, it hit me right in the feels now.
So I sure as heck, our Black Knight 2000 right now is at Lakewood Brewery, and I feel like
what's our address? Can I go there?
Thinking it, yeah, it's in Garland, Texas. Everyone should go play there. You can play pinball for 50 cents a game. I really actually want to go play that pinball all of a sudden because, geez,
that's our Arcade Anywhere project, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
So
I think what's the address? Plug it.
For Lakewood.
Arcade.
You can go to quarter.fun.
Quarter.fun. There you go.
Oh, man,
if you're in the DFW area, and
it'll redirect you to our Arcade Anywhere project, which is we now have 2 breweries, Alamo Drafthouse locations. That we just have games that you can randomly pop up, and they're the real deal, original arcades that are there to play for you to enjoy. Either on a quarter, or if it's pinball, it's 50 cents, and we only have 1 pinball out.
Demand Gals Panic 2, please.
Right?
Please.
Let's get that to the public. So yeah, while we were talking about Jersey Jack, we have to stop and talk about Spooky Pinball, and I'm trying to see when they release this. So Spooky Pinball comes up, and it seems like, and it is the most like cool upstart small thing that's happening in pinball. Like they're in like Wisconsin basically in like a barn or something, and they're like, we're gonna make pinball, and I don't think anyone believed that it would ever happen. And in the meantime, they're sitting there saying, we think we know how to put this stuff together. We think we can do a decent, production line and actually make pinball. And whereas Jersey Jack was making these ultra expensive games that were kind of like high end, high concept, interesting stuff, and you had Stern over there with just like license. There comes Spooky, and their pitch is kind of, we don't think they have to be quite as expensive, and we think we can do some unique stuff in small run pinball. I mean, it's like craft pinball all of a sudden. It's small batch pinball. And they sign up Ben Heck. And if you know anything about YouTube gaming, retro gaming, you probably know about Ben Heck because he is just a genius at repairing old stuff or coming up with like kind of functionality devices for people who might have impairments or limitations. He can come up with really cool custom stuff that he builds. He's a prominent kind of gamer spokesman, and they ask him kind of like what he's thinking, what if he has any interest in helping them. And there's this long process story, but basically he gets to build his own pinball, and he has to come up with every aspect of it. What's going to control it? What kind of computer it's going to run on? What switches it's going to use? Almost everything he has to kind of come up with. So that's what he did, and he built a complete custom build pinball design for them. And it is, they were like, they didn't know if they were ever going to do it, they were ever going to make it. So they say, we're going to do 150, and that's going to be it. We think we can make a few dollars if we do 150 of these pinballs. And they built it, and it's amazing. And this is one of the coolest things I get to say now. And you can play it at free play.
Right.
So
on the Arlington floor right now.
So it's on the Arlington floor. It's not exactly the easiest to keep on the floor. It has a lot of custom pieces. I've actually personally, and if I'm repairing something really bad has happened. So I've personally had to go and work on this machine a few times. Because it's complicated. We've had to come up with improvises, and I think our Arlington techs are probably tired of improvising stuff. Because
at your description, it's an improvised game,
right? Well,
and it's onset.
So what's really funny is we were asking them because we were trying to figure out what a part was that we needed to be replaced, and they were like, "We don't know." And we were like, "What do you mean you don't know?" They're like, "We don't have a parts manual or parts list for the game."
Did they have one for their later games?
Well, yeah, and they don't have a manual for it at all. It was 150 produced. Mm-hmm. Writing manuals takes a lot of time. It's a hard thing.
I'm certain.
So I think that based on my conversations with them, I'm pretty sure they went and found their reference machine and opened it up and found the part that we needed and figured out what part it was and told us where we could maybe find one. But you know what? It's actually a really good game. It's a little basic. But I really think the flow on it's really unique and just absurd kind of cool. And I feel like a lot of pinball, if it had a different back glass, it would do even better. The back glass, if you've ever seen, it's a little cheesy.
Yes.
And back glass seriously seems to affect people's opinions of
It
pinball.
looks like it's based on a 2000s era like reality show.
Right.
Is it?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
I mean, that's kind of what the story is, right? You're like exploring a haunted
I can't
house.
say I watch much 2000s era reality, so you could blow that by me of like this is a real show or not.
But it is. I think it's a really good pinball, and it's really neat piece of history because it was their first. And
of the spooky pinballs, this is the one I've played the least.
Yeah, and it's cool. Well, there's going to be some you probably haven't seen very much of because So Spooky Pinball then started.
I'm looking at a list of 6.
What you're gonna see
I haven't seen them all.
becomes their kind of normal thing because they see that Stern's making a lot of money by teaming up with licensed bands. So Spooky's next game, the first license, was Rob Zombie's Spook Show International. And if you own this pinball, I'm about to say something that's kind of mean. This game is way too basic. It's too simple. It has, I think that the fact that they had Rob Zombie record, if I remember correctly, the call-outs, that's cool. That's really neat.
I don't know if I could tell, even though I listened to his music, I don't know if I could tell you what his voice sounds like.
Kind of a deep grating. Right. I don't know.
And so that was sold out, and that was, it's well loved by its owners, and it's really cool to see pop up occasionally. So I think that it didn't flow as nicely or work quite as well as America's Most Wanted, but I'm sure there's people that would disagree with me. And then they came out, and this was when people started to get a little concerned. Next thing you know, Spooky Pinball is making Domino's Pinball Adventure for Domino's Pizza.
Yo Noid Pinball?
If only.
Yeah, no, it was, they had, I don't know who they thought they were going to sell this to. Obviously Domino's got some.
Only.
And
what year was this? This was 2016?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Wikipedia?
Yeah, that sounds right.
And
so
Domino's hasn't exactly been on top of the world these past few years, have they?
Domino's funded part of this. I think
so.
I think they guaranteed something like 20 or 40 sales, and someone on the internet probably knows the exact details, but they did not guarantee all of the sales. And if I remember correctly, they only guaranteed...
Tried to shop the rest of them to Papa John's.
So they still pop up. Well, what's really irritating is do you know
what the run numbers were?
I think it was like 100.
Okay.
I think. And
can you order it and get it reskinned for your particular pizza joint?
That would have probably been a cool, smart thing for them to do. Because I've actually thought
Julie?
I thought about putting something like this out that wasn't exactly this pinball, but then, you just think, here we are at Free Play Arcade. We're, a cool, small, growing brand that's trying to, build its own name and everything. And we have our own pizza that I think is good. It's great, great stuff. And just to think about putting a Domino's pinball is just, no, never going to happen.
Why don't we get one and just Sharpie over everywhere it says Domino's and write Free Play?
Just draw the Free Play logo. Put the sticker over it.
Reskin that. Carlos is making the pizza.
Oh, I like it. I like it a lot.
And so then there was the next concerning thing that Spooky did. And so this is when I think everyone in the world was like, is Spooky really a pinball company that's going to make it? And maybe this is what helped them get there, because they teamed up with the Pinball Company, which we've done business with a couple times, but they're this behemoth pinball dealer.
Like parts?
And real games.
Okay.
They're not only like a Stern distributor and Jersey Jack, but this was their concept to make a kind of inexpensive introductory pinball that would be a little bit kind of, I think they just charged like $4,000 or $3,500 for it.
We're not talking about the thing that my mom got me for my 8th birthday. It's like this big, right?
Not a department store pinball.
Okay.
This was this was the idea that, if you have a game room, you want a kid-friendly theme that is, just a good, simple game to play. And that was what the Jetsons pinball was. I don't think it did very well. It's not popping up very much. It's still for sale. And
side note: has any one season like show gotten more run than the Jetsons?
No, probably not.
It was only one season.
Yeah, canceled after one season.
It had to have like
It's had movies
a lot of
since then.
episodes. I don't know.
I mean, Firefly comes to mind, but
watched
that's
it.
about it.
So that comes out, and it's an exclusive with Pinball Company, and it was a contract build. And I can't even say anything negative about it. I think now though the rest of the stock's selling for like $5,000 or $5,500, which for such a basic pinball, I don't think anyone should pay. But that's why everyone hates me, because I say stuff like that.
Yeah, just looked at the board, and it doesn't seem to have a whole lot going on.
There's like one ramp and stuff. It's
here you go.
Cool.
I mean, it doesn't look unfun. It just kind of bland.
And I actually think this one came out after the next pinball, but I guess I can look on what is on Alice Cooper's Nightmare Castle versus Total Nuclear Annihilation. Which one came out first? Does it say on Wikipedia?
Total Nuclear came out August 2017. April of 2018 was Alice Cooper's, according to Wikipedia.
So shortly thereafter, Spooky announces something that looks really cool, and it was called Total Nuclear Annihilation.
Yeah.
And I just saw, and it's honestly kind of like a retro wave pinball.
It is. Yeah.
It's like a throwback to the 80s, but with taking full advantage of current technology, current sound design, and current speed of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But
also like the angles from the old 80s machines.
Right.
It's more, what do they call that era? Solid state?
It's really like early solid state.
Yeah.
It's like 80s mid.
But like a Black Knight 2000 angles and things like that.
Right.
Simplistic design, but fantastic to learn how to play pinball. Like, amazing. This is one of my favorite pinballs ever.
Well, and
likewise,
I feel
this game taught me how to play pinball.
Total Nuclear Annihilation. Pinball people now have kind of started to sour on it, because it doesn't give you a 30-minute game or a 40-minute game.
I mean, that's just because they're terrible.
But Total Nuclear Annihilation, when it came out,
where are they playing with quarters that they really care about getting a half hour?
So most of the people that are setting these rankings are home players that do like little home tournament circuits. So there's not a lot of money except for buying these expensive pinballs involved.
Yeah.
But Total Nuclear Annihilation is so different that, I mean, it's still a well-loved pinball. I think it's top 20, top 30, which it should be, because it's amazing.
Every technique that you need to learn to be a good pinball player, to get, progress through these games, each game, regardless of table design, is specifically incentivized in Total Nuclear Annihilation. I'm not talking smash the machine so hard that it bounces through the window. No. Every gentle technique, every subtle technique, every type of shot, even though there's no ramps on this board, is absolutely incentivized in Total Nuclear Annihilation. It's absolutely amazing. I can't give it enough praise. Also, we have our own cosplayer coming up for that.
Really?
That backdrop image.
So
that's awesome.
We received one of the first, I can't remember, 60 or so units, because I jumped on it the second I saw it. I just said, you know what, I'm sitting here buying all these new pinballs. I got to get one of those. And that we technically got a Total Nuclear Annihilation before we were able to find their original America's Most Haunted. So we did a big full-on launch party for it. We love Total Nuclear Annihilation. I think it's still one of the best, and it's so engrossing, and it's so, you can walk up to it, play it, know exactly why you lost, and go back again to play it again, because you want to. You want to figure that out. You want to keep going.
And like you said, it'll play fast. If you're banging it around, that it puts so much speed on the ball, and then it incentivizes you to take the speed away. It's so good.
And we now have two of them.
By the way, it's the first game that I have played on pinball where you can defeat it.
Right.
There is an ending to it.
You can win.
Yeah, you can win. The game shuts off.
It's so cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's Total Nuclear Annihilation.
Although you blow up the Earth doing it.
Right. Yeah.
That's also cool.
You do have to do all the meltdown.
Spoiler warning.
The sound and the lighting, it's all really fun. It works really well together. I think it's
oddly feels a little bit like Tron to me, not in gameplay, but just in aesthetics.
Well, it's got that 80s futuristic.
And I
probably inspired in part by
from a modern perspective.
I can tell you that the two free play units, and we don't do this a lot, but the two free play units are customized in a way that I guarantee you no other Total Nuclear Annihilation is customized. not only was it loaded from the factory, but we have a couple tweaks that we do to make the pinball, to me, feel more alive, to in your hands, to kind of feel like, because I think it's really important during those like the countdowns and the actual total nuclear annihilation moments. We spent a lot of time making sure that our versions felt as good as possible in our environment. And if someone is listening to this and was like, I want to figure out how to make mine just like that, just shoot me an email. I'll tell you what we do. Because it's not like a proprietary secret. I think it's really cool. I just don't want to spend the next 30 minutes telling y'all these minute details about a game that there's only a few hundred of them in existence. But
how many did they make? Do you know?
They're still making them.
That's cool.
So that's
good. Keep making them.
So since it was a original concept, they weren't stuck to any like licensing agreement or anything, and so when it was a hit, they just started building them. I think ours was like, I think we got like number 59 or 66 or something, and then our next one I think was 197 or something.
Selling pretty well then.
So we have now, we had two of the first 200 that came off the line, but they are still making it, still going, and they haven't announced their next pinball. They did do Alice Cooper's Nightmare Castle after Total Nuclear Annihilation.
I just can't go on enough about how good Total Nuclear Annihilation is. New IP, gorgeous IP, new design, reminiscent of the old stuff, but not copying it. Man.
Yeah, no, it was
every criticism I have about Stern, like, is answered in full by this machine. It's incredible.
Well, and I think to the extent people who are rating it low are like someone who bought it for their home. You should come play it in an arcade on like a busy Saturday night and just see kind of how special it is. It attracts people. It keeps people playing. You want to go back and play it. Because I could kind of see, I think it's a beautiful, amazing pinball, but I could kind of see an experience where you just paid $6,000 or whatever for this pinball table. It shows up, you're used to playing your Addams Family or whatever, and then you get this, and 5 minutes later your first game is done, and you're just like, whoa, this is there's totally different.
There's not a full motion video happening with every every different mode. In fact, there aren't a lot of different modes. You're triggering the reactor, you're doing the multi-ball, and then you're blowing up the reactor, and you do that 9 times and you beat the game, and it gets harder each time, but it's basically one mission that progresses a very old school format, but that's that's the design,
right?
And it is a clearly curated pinball experience,
right? Well, and it's kind of neat because it was the concept was designed by one person, controlled by one person. I don't know if you remember when we launched it, we gave away a boombox with the soundtrack to Total Nuclear Annihilation on tape.
On cassette.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a cassette tape with a boombox, which is just silly and goofy, but cool. Like I loved the idea that we had that, and we put that together. So while we were on Spooky, so we have Spooky now, Jersey Jack, Stern. Let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and pop over. We talked about this a little bit on that last podcast. In the middle of all that, Chicago Gaming decides designing good pinballs all well and good or whatever, trying to do new stuff. They're like, but there's a huge demand for the greatest pinballs of all time that were made kind of in the mid to late 90s when the production numbers were going down, but everyone was really figuring out pinball right then before the whole market crashed. Chicago Gaming announced in partnership originally with Stern that they were going to make Medieval Madness, and they did a re-release on Medieval Madness that is great. Plays, you can put side by side. I know I'm not the biggest pinball guy. I'm good at pinball. I like to play pinball. I think I am above average, but you could put a Medieval Madness original and a Medieval Madness the re-release next to each other, the classic re-release, and assuming all the lighting and everything was the same, I don't think I'd be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, the startup screen, that's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So they
in classic mode, that is.
Right, and then Chicago Gaming also released a bunch of stuff that I'm going to criticize just because I don't get it, because they announced the classic versions, which were designed to look like the original, which I think were just these beautiful machines, and then they announced that they were going to have a the premium or whatever they called them, I can't even remember. Where they put these huge wide screens in, and they changed stuff.
Awesome. You know what's great? Taking a classic and changing everything.
Maybe I'm just an old man.
Maybe just make your own thing.
Maybe I can't get it. But yeah, they put these color widescreen displays in it, stuff like that. I couldn't get into it. They changed things. They gave you bonus features. I was like, but this is medieval madness, guys.
Right.
I don't want to pay $8,000 or however much I pay for these to not be as close to the original as possible.
I'm kind of cool with your new ideas in new games.
Right. So so we have 2 Medieval Madnesses out, both repros.
Capcom tries to redesign Street Fighter 2 like every 6 months.
Right. Well,
and it's already perfect from 20 or 30 years ago.
And I honestly didn't feel that the changes were improvements. So then Chicago Gaming builds their own production line, which was also pretty crazy to think about. And they go away from Stern because obviously paying Stern to build something that you've acquired the license for and everything is not as profitable as being able to build it yourself. So they build it and they release Attack from Mars, one of the greatest pinballs of all time. And they did the exact same thing where they had a very cool classic version that looked just like the original, and then they released a bunch of goofy other versions that had color, HD, widescreen, stuff like that, different color legs and stuff. Now, in their defense, the core gameplay isn't messed with, thank God.
Thank God.
But it's really funny because every once in a while I'll have someone come up and be like, "Why don't you have like the limited edition of these re-releases?" And I'm like, "Because I don't want it. Like I don't want changing. I want that original experience." Because I feel like that's
retro arcade.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big part of selling this game is to have it as close to the original as possible and make it really feel that way. When I go, for example, to the Texas Pinball Festival, which is coming up, which we will be at. You can stop by our booth, play some of our games. We're running the pre-party at the National Video Game Museum. So we're big fans. But when I go and I play these re-releases that aren't like the original, it's definitely not adding to the experience. And I might say that it's taking it away.
I say if a re-release isn't specifically a re-release, then what's the point? Or as close as you can
I agree.
Get it.
All of ours are...
Everybody loves the George Lucas add-ons to the special editions, right?
Right.
Now Han shoots first and misses, and Greedo shoots and misses, then Han shoots and
Han
wins.
shoots first version of Monster Bash.
Right. And so, and now, not to release the secrets that I'm sure everyone should recognize, Chicago Gaming does these premium versions because they're then able to sell $400 or $500 of upgrades to their cost for $3,000 as a limited thing. It's just pure profit. It's the easiest thing to make a little bit of extra money, and I'm not at all criticizing them for doing that. I'm more just not sure why people keep buying them, but people do, and some people are like, it's better. It's it's the same core game, but I have different tastes than people. I've been called a purist. I don't know if y'all have ever heard this. I mean, the press has actually called me. Like that I'm on a maniacal pursuit of something that just can't be possible kind
maniacal.
of
I think that's all fair. Yeah. That's all fair.
They did then release Monster Bash, awesome pinball, and we rolled 2 out because we just love this game so much. One's at Denton, one's at Arlington. It's an all-time great. And Chicago Gaming in general, I cannot complain about their build quality. I cannot complain about anything. They started from scratch. They're remaking these classic games, and they're just trying to make sure that they deliver that original amazing core gameplay. And then you can give them a few extra $1,000, and they'll put some goofy stuff on your game.
We got 2, huh?
Yeah. There's one at Denton because Twilight Zone went down to Denton. So while that one's in the shop, there's one at Monster.
I think we're looking at the March Pinball Game of the Month right there.
Right. Well, and I want to just for all of you who listen to this that have not been discouraged by me enough on opening an arcade, we put a Monster Bash in our Denton location that charges $6 after tax. That is, you can look it up, but it's like $8,000. And it's on all you can play. You can pay $6. So the other thing I guess I'm trying to say is, I know why people love to buy their own pinball, but just come play it at free play. It makes more financial sense. I might get to sell you a beer. We might all have a good time. But yeah, it's
more games than just the one. Too.
It's an insane endeavor just to think about having Denton at $6 after tax, and it's right now they have Medieval Madness, Monster Bash, dialed in, top tier, latest release, super good pinballs. Not to mention Denton Heat, which just today we got new sounds working on Denton Heat.
Oh, fantastic.
So we are almost completely reskinned. So all of the stuff that anyone ever complained about is almost gone, and just the good is left.
Can we get that Can we get that Bowling for Soup license?
Right, that's what we need.
Have you put any thought into the pinball selection from the upcoming Fort Worth free play?
Yes, and unfortunately, some of it's I have to order a bunch of new Sterns. So because
Iron Maiden, perhaps.
Yeah, well, yeah,
favorite
definitely. That was coming up. In about 2016, the middle of 2016, Stern started just releasing good thing after good thing. And so yeah, we will be reacquiring some pinballs that we already have, because I imagine that lineup's going to end up having something like 6 Stern, 6 retro, and then hopefully a handful of the either Jersey Jack or Spooky Games, whatever we can kind of figure out there.
Do we have any EM pinballs on the floor right now?
No.
Okay.
And
one ever, maybe?
Yeah, and we have a couple that are sitting in the back of
EM,
different...
is that the dial?
Yes. The EM is the
Okay,
true switch pinball.
those.
Everything is just so and there is, and we talked about this a little bit. We touched on it. There are some people that would say that those are more reliable than the early solid states, and they might be right. But we've never done it just because those definitely were not meant to be played as much as our pinball gets played. Loading 4 credits and playing through one of those is not a big deal, but when you get into those hundreds and hundreds and hundreds a day, they're just by design going to start getting caught up on things, breaking on things.
Right,
and
you'll see them killed during every TPF, unfortunately.
Right. And it's normally minor to fix them. Because they don't have the same kind of components, so it's generally easier to fix a lot of the minor problems, but they happen so much it doesn't really work for an environment like ours where it's not, you don't have to pay to play every game. I guess we need to try to work through the last parts of modern pinball. I feel like we've
I want to trash Deadpool.
We're on Stern. So this is a game, Batman 66, that came out that was really, really raw. Like, it came out in 2016, and there's still code updates coming out for it like today. And I think it's really improved. A lot of people complained about the licensing because it's a 1966 kind of throwback to Batman.
Given that every game is licensed, I kind of get a kick out of it because, like you said, it is a throwback.
Well, they really had...
It's aggressively a throwback.
They had fun with it. I mean, the bat phone thing or the spinning thing. I mean, it's been kind of a pain to keep on the floor.
There's a thing related to the TV series. In the middle of the playfield, you need to hit it continually.
You never guessed that Stern made it. So they followed that up with Aerosmith, which is, loved. It's
that game is a seizure waiting to happen. Like, there are so many flashing lights. I actually quit a tournament match.
Arthur is sensitive to light.
Literally.
So yeah, Aerosmith is a big light show, and
that was my game that I couldn't help but pile up credits on in LA.
Yeah, no, it's kind of an easy game, and it's not. I don't think it's held in the same esteem as AC/DC or Metallica, but it is. I think it's still a pretty cool game. Then
I can't help but lump them all together.
Yeah,
I mean they're all Sterns. They're all the 80s rock band. It's just hard to differentiate.
It all makes sense though. I mean, they know their target.
This is what I will compliment about that specific table. It has the practical effect of throwing the ball into the box. Yes, the toys in the box or toys in the attic. It literally throws it in the box.
I haven't played it too much, but at least twice the ball didn't make it in on the one that was using.
Yes, well, it wasn't working at all in the machine in LA. It had another code, or maybe that was a limited edition. Who knows? Where it didn't physically throw it in. Throw it, bounced off, it came out. The one in Denton has worked every time I've played it.
It might be a setting that you can turn it or change it. But yeah, no, ours in Denton has. The Denton techs work hard to keep it going, and they have. So then came out what was going to be the most obvious money-making pin, Star Wars, based on the original trilogy, made by Stern. No one likes this pinball that much. It's really...
I'm all right with it.
It's
ultra
okay.
complex.
Right.
It is way complex.
It's got some weird stuff involving the video screen where you're
you
suddenly controlling the Millennium Falcon with the flipper buttons.
There's mini games and stuff. A lot of people have questioned the implementation of those. They've questioned why there isn't kind of an empty play field.
Well, this comes out at almost the exact same time that Total Nuclear Annihilation came out.
Right,
so you have maybe the most complex, convoluted pinball table ever, and maybe the most simplistic, pure pinball experience in 30 years. Bang bang at the same time, and yeah, I definitely saw some blowback in the because it's a Steve Ritchie table. I saw some blowback to Steve Ritchie's face in the last TPF I went to.
Yeah, and so it's
I think it's fine though.
it's another thing that it's become a little bit better with the code, and every arcade had to buy one because of the
Star Wars.
Star Wars,
of course.
It was so
there's no way
like there
around
was
it.
a rush to see, and you know, I was starting to feel a little defeated when the next one came out and we first played, and we were just talking about it. Guardians of the Galaxy comes out, and it was like, why is this so bad?
Agreed.
And then it's great now. I actually really like it.
I think
it's
we
really
may have
fun.
talked about it last time too.
Yeah,
but yeah, when it came out originally, I did not have a lick of fun with it.
And so
And now it's a lot of fun.
yeah, code updates, but tough to put that out to consumers, right? We're as an arcade putting it out there and being like, here, play this, and
buy our new pinball 2 years later.
And so then the one that
If they
everyone
lose
is
the
talking
license
about,
in the meantime, though, that's the trouble right there.
they
Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Rest in
one
peace.
everyone loves. Arthur was just mentioning it. Iron Maiden.
Iron Maiden is fantastic.
I feel like that was at least for Stern quite unique. It plays a little differently
Sure.
than most of theirs.
There's a ramp in the middle.
There's
Not-
different stuff.
A double loop instead of a single loop.
There's different elements. There's actual different elements.
That double loop is awesome.
What,
That's
I,
so
what I
cool.
really wonder, I mean, I love the pinball table. I think it's a great release. What I really wonder is if everyone wasn't so tired of the same Stern pinball coming out that when Stern did something different, everyone was like, "This is the greatest thing that's ever happened. This is the best pinball of the year." I love it. I think it's a good pinball all by itself. I think it's an all-time great pinball. I think it's wonderful. But yeah, wow, was the reception just like Stern did it? It's great. It's different.
Hooray for something.
And we were, I mean, and we all felt the same way. So yeah, definitely.
This is when X-Men came out and was like the greatest comic book movie you've ever seen. Since, it's kind of
So
dull.
it's a
At the
great.
time,
wish it
I
was
thought
colorful.
that Blade was better. Hot take for you.
Oh no.
So then
Just got it in the bag for Wesley Snipes.
Stern was like, "Sweet, just made this awesome Iron Maiden. Let's release Deadpool."
Would have been better if it were Blade.
They had a lot
More
of.
Wesley Snipes is what Deadpool needed.
Someone
true.
had fun making this game, but I did not have fun playing it. Like, so it's so generically Stern and dull and kind of not finished at all.
But you got to go through the loop to go up the ramp.
Right.
Okay, that's actually okay. So the katana shot
No,
is, I think, the most controversial part of this table, and it's definitely the part that I see what they did there and see why this seems like a terrible idea, because you have to make a shot that loops around, shoots up, and it goes up a ramp and then loops back again, and it's a practical shot, right? I just said how much I like practical effects, but like making that thing line up.
You can go straight through the
that
loopy
table is
parts,
doomed.
Right.
and it still. I have a lot of trouble getting it to go through the katana.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Any
the-
minute spin on the ball is
And,
gonna
yeah.
just.
But
crush
also
it.
any wear on the table is going to make this shot impossible, and
Well-
that's what the game is designed around. It's not a future proof game. It is a doomed game.
Well, it's
That
even as
sounds
bad as did the person in
realistic
front of
trouble.
you kick the front leg out enough to mess up the angles, and then all of a
Exactly.
sudden, like it's so sensitive and dumb. But
yeah,
I mean, they have released quite a few batches. It is, I mean, they definitely had the theme. I
but
think
no
they
matter
did
how
it.
many patches they release, it
Right,
will
that
still
shot
have
is still.
that one shot, that katana shot that is a very practical, very like it has to be working absolutely perfect for this shot to even be possible. Then it's still hard, but it's not even possible otherwise.
All right, so after Deadpool, which was the last Stern we have so far, Stern made two kind of recent-ish. So Deadpool was a 2018, so was Iron Maiden. So these are really, really recent pinballs. But Stern then makes some weird announcements that made me just not happy. And fortunately, I think I've been mildly vindicated on it. Stern announces the Beatles pinball, which you think, geez, they're going to sell a trillion of them. But they say they didn't get the licensing for most of it's early Beatles, basically. So they kind of make it simple pinball. It is like a
Wasn't this a reskin as well?
yeah. So this
Really?
was a
Yeah.
reskin of a 1970s pinball that I kind of like, but back then. So yeah, it was a reskin of it was like gosh, why can't I remember?
So just a total cash grab. See how many people we can sucker in just with the name Beatles.
So yeah, so they didn't have to really spend any money on designing the pinball because it was a reskin of. And I'm
Well,
trying-
I mean, the Beatles don't deserve their own original pinball. That's
no one's ever
Stern.
even heard of them. Why would they? So so they released. Gosh, I can't find what it was based on. But they released it with one of the things was gonna, one of the categories was only gonna have like 100 made, and they were only gonna make 1967 or something of them, anyways, because that was the year that they were basing our 57. I don't know. Anyways, it's a dud of a table. It's come out. It's not very good. There are desperate dealers calling me every day to try to unload a Beatles pinball on me, because no one really wants it. It was not very good. It was definitely not an exciting game. It's not like nearly to the design level, obviously, of like Iron Maiden.
I feel like to capture the essence of the Beatles, maybe you'd want a simpler 70s style board. But if you don't do it well, don't do it justice. I mean, like something like Total Nuclear Annihilation, has
that's inspired by, whereas this is a block copy, and then you just cheap parts, and then you just not the songs that you want, and I
don't know what the song list is.
It feels like a baseline.
It was Sea Witch was the layout that I was trying to say.
Sea Witch?
Yeah, Stern Sea Witch.
I've played that one
from back in the day.
Then you don't need to play Beatles pinball.
Is what they copied. And I thought Sea Witch was fine, but it's definitely a dated game, and I would be really upset if I paid a lot of money for a Beatles super limited edition. So they made fewer than 2,000 of these, and it
feels like a heat check shot, like whenever someone shoots a basketball shot from near half court, just to see if they're hot enough that it's going to go in.
Yeah,
how dumb can we make this? How much can we insult people with just the Beatles license to figure out what our baseline is of just suckering people into buying just for the name?
So in the middle of this, Stern also announced that they had sold a independent company 100 Primus pinballs. Based on the band Primus.
Take back everything I said. Beatles pinball, the best released of that year.
So Primus is announced, and everyone is like, "Whoa, only 100? That's really low." And it's going to sell for like $9,000. And everyone's like, "Where's it coming from? How's it?" And then someone, there was a leaked photograph, and there it was. Our newest reskin of Whoa Nelly's Big Juicy Melons was released as Primus,
awesome.
With very minor changes, but it was the same parts, same table. They probably had about 100 sitting there.
Put the decal on there.
So now, in their
defense, some way to paint up the watermelon crate.
What everyone said was, look, people who like Primus don't like pinball. An actual argument I read on the internet. Why would they care? They don't care about what's in the game. They just want them to look cool. And Stern made a cool looking cabinet. They had they only made 100 of them, and the backlist was hand painted again. It was
over the Whoa Nelly.
It was I mean they couldn't reprint it, so they had to
I feel like Primus doesn't have the same appeal as the last two musical features,
they only made
the Beatles and Iron Maiden.
They only made 100, which caused unfortunately some arcades, at least 20 of them went to arcades because arcades wanted to be like, this is one of only 100. Unfortunately, it's terrible.
Their gimmicks work.
Yeah, I'm sure it's sold out. I maybe those prices are going to be high because it's so limited, but no matter what, you cannot make that a good pinball.
Sounds like we got another Total Nuclear Annihilation coming.
That was kind of an interesting. And now, of course, Stern would just be saying, "Listen, we're just we're trying to make
their business.
We're trying to make pinball work. The Beatles was a collaboration. We're trying to test out and blah blah blah. The Primus thing was just a contract job. It's not a big deal. We just sold 100 new big Whoa Nelly Juicy Melons or whatever." And then Stern's newest real release, which I guess has kind of come out in some versions. It hasn't released general release. Oh, it has now, I think. Was the Munsters. Now, the Munsters is a good game. It came out. These are nice things I can say about. And we're going to have one at Free Play. And in fact, one of ours will be at the Texas Pinball Festival.
Oh, nice.
And the downside to the Munsters was Premium Munsters has a whole nother playfield. It's totally different.
Which one's better?
Well, that's one of the interesting things, because most of the people who buy them are going to rate based on how much it costs, basically.
Right.
So
yeah.
the premium players are no matter what going to say this is the best and rate it as highly as possible to help protect their investment. We have a premium because if I guess I'm going to get a whole nother playfield if I have to pay for it. Well,
if you have another play field. I mean, that's essentially 2 entirely different games.
I know.
Yes.
And
That is exactly right.
It's not the first time, but
and one's not necessarily better than the other.
Well, and Stern had kind of said things like they would only be like adding stuff on like re-releases and stuff, but this is on the original release, totally different. And we have one coming, whether we like it or not, because this was supposed to be, the concept was trying to capture that Twilight Zone or Addams Family vibe and make a pinball that was as good as those. I don't know how it's doing in terms of people responding to it, because I haven't actually heard very much about it, other than it was coming out. So right now it's not looking great. Normally new pinball starts quite high and then slowly falls to where it's eventually going to sit. Right now, the only Munsters rated is at 45, tied for 45, which generally means it's going to fall down from that out of the top 100, if history shows us anything. So
apparently it's better than the Big Lebowski for now.
Well, and so that's
right.
We got to wrap this up. So that's all the Stern. That's all the Jersey Jack. That's a minor history of pinball and some weird opinions thrown in there with some side tales and weird stuff. In the meantime, a couple new pinballs companies have shown up. Dutch Pinball made the Big Lebowski, which is now becoming a little bit more highly rated than people expected. I think Dutch Pinball has something else going on. I don't know, because the second result here was class action lawsuit for the Big Lebowski question mark. So I don't know. They made something I really hate, the Bride of Pinball 2.0, which was this expensive upgrade kit that changed Bride of Pinball's rules, changed the game. I don't know why you touch it. I thought it was great, but you know me.
You actually put this upgrade kit into an original Bride of Pinball?
Yeah.
Oh.
And there are places around town that have done that, so I don't like
Intriguing.
It's not nearly as cool. It's a worse version of it.
Like,
but
Bride of Pinball's a cool
But that
table.
was kind of what Dutch Pinball, I think, used for seed money for Big Lebowski. Big Lebowski is an okay pinball. It has come out. I think there's another. I'm trying to speed do this. So yeah, there was American Pinball, which made, what did they make? Apparently, they made Houdini. I don't know if you've played that or if you're at the table. It is totally acceptable at the table.
All right.
Glowing review.
And they have Oktoberfest as their big one coming up. I'm sure we'll see it a lot at TPF as they are clearly building it. You have to give it, because Houdini, I'm sure, is a public domain type license. I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
But it's totally acceptable, and people have said that it's pretty reliable. So that's something. And I don't mean to sound negative. I think it's cool that we have new people coming in to make pinball. And that's really awesome. It's just, it's hard for a company like us to even like things like Spooky Pinball is kind of scary, because as we buy a bunch of them, it's you don't really know if the support's going to be there.
Stick around, right? For support, for because we're going through some parts,
just to make sure that our
giving
parts
them
are still
40,000 plays every couple months.
So yeah, that is actually all of the current pinball manufacturers: American Pinball, who did Houdini, Chicago Gaming Company, who did the re-releases we spoke about, Jersey Jack, who did Dialed In and Hobbit and everything. Oh, and Jersey Jack does have a new one that's out. We'll have one coming to free play soon called Pirates of the Caribbean. I thought it was a really weird license to get, but people really like this game, so I'm hoping that it just kind of is bigger than the license, because Stern, in fact, released the Pirates of the Caribbean like 12 years ago, back when Pirates of the Caribbean was a thing. So really weird, I thought, license to grab, but by all accounts, the pinball's good. So we'll see how it goes. That should be on a free play floor soon. Then there's Spooky, we spoke about, Stern. And then there's one company we didn't talk about yet, Multimorphic Inc. They are making these really, I actually like them, but they're really, really weird and goofy, and probably you won't see one on a free play floor. They made a pinball platform that is where you can kind of have a new pinball game pretty frequently. So it's
the one that has like a digital display on, on top of it.
Well, no, so it's not like a total virtual pinball. So there's virtual pinball where you basically put a TV on a pinball table.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
But these are modular play fields where you can drag and drop a new play field in or a new upper play field.
Stern already has that.
Right. Stern has and then they also have it so that like the bottom can be like a reactive screen. And you can change your artwork and stuff as you play and have it react, which allows for some kind of cool stuff that I never expected to like, where you'll be playing pinball and like the ball will roll over and hit a bumper, and the guy that's like supposed to be behind the bumper, instead of having a big toy that shakes or whatever, you actually have a character in the game be surprised and stuff like that. And it's goofy, it's weird, but I like that it's so absurdly different.
This reminds me of RPG Maker.
And in fact, I also really like Multimorphic because we famously in the pinball community bought 100 sheets of glass from them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That is
threw one of those into the machine just yesterday.
That is all of the pinball manufacturers right now. There are some obviously recent ones, some others upstarts that are trying, but maybe that's for another podcast because we've kind of walked through pinball. We've kind of talked about what we like. We've kind of just chatted pinball for 3 hours. Well,
so until next time. This
now
is,
we are signing off.
Chris Delp,
Arthur Williams,
who has opinions about pinball.
Yeah, right.
Unfounded.
And I just want to close by saying, Stern, I love you way more than Raw Thrills.
There you go.
Bye.
See you guys.